Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Dove, author of Master Dressage. We're going to be doing 10 lessons. This is the very first lesson. It's a very basic lesson on alignment and posture. We're going to be using Millie as an example. Now, all of my work that we're going to be demonstrating over these 10 lessons is based wholly upon the work of Mary Wanless, the author of the Riding Mind books and DVDs. So you should definitely go and check her out too. She does a lot of courses and has about 6 books out. I got involved with this because I'm one of Mary's pupils, and also I'm able to put together the technology to demonstrate some of this to you. A lot of what we're going to talk about is based in physics. It will all have very clear explanations. There's no wishy-washiness, and we're going to make sure that you have some exercises that you can go away with at the end of the session and practice. So we'll call that homework. Thanks everybody for signing up. The response has been incredible. I mean, really incredible. And what that means to me is that I get to continue doing Master Dressage full time, teaching, writing, doing these videos for you. And I can promise you that this 10-week course, this 10-module course, is going to be amazing. I'm going to be able to provide you with extra video clips, homework. I'm going to be able to answer your questions on Facebook, through email. And now I've nearly kind of caught up with getting all of the books out as well. I do have a little bit more time. I'll also be providing you some clips from our riding sessions and teaching sessions with Millie and other pupils as well. Mary will be turning up in a couple of the more advanced lessons, and so she'll be running the lecture as well. So we'll begin almost immediately. I just wanted to say thank you to Millie for doing this. She's always up for doing demonstrations, and if at any point you need something clarified or you need a closer view of what I'm doing, then just say so over the chat, and we'll either do that immediately or we'll park it towards the end, and I'll take the camera off the tripod and bring it in so you can have a closer look. So we're just going to get Tinker to be a little bit closer to the camera so that she fills the frame. That's great. So Millie, if you could bring her around as close to behind me as possible. No, Tinker. No, this strange stuff's very scary. Ooh. Okay.
Sorry.
Room me over. Are we level here? We are. Good. All right. So are you right there? Let's just take a step. Yeah, I think we'll just take a step now.
Standing up.
She's not. Okay. So the very first thing I do when I look at a rider is to sort out their stirrup length before we do any other adjustments. We want to get the stirrup length as close as possible. So this is Millie's normal length, and basically what you're looking for is that the thigh is at about a 45-degree angle. And this is okay for Millie. I wouldn't want to see her a whole longer, but this is fine for her. What I'm going to do now is just kind of show you some other issues that riders have with stirrup length. So I think first we'll go too short. So with the stirrup length too short, you can see that the thigh has a much more acute angle than the 45 degrees. I think when I measured this using the computer, this was 50 degrees. And you can imagine if it went up any higher than that, it'd be sort of 55 degrees or so. The issue with having the thigh at a more sort of horizontal angle than 45 degrees is actually you end up a little bit too far at the back of the saddle. Your thigh doesn't work very well as a lever, which means that if the horse hollers its back, it's very easy for your whole weight to land in the hollow of the horse. And you can end up landing too far back in the saddle as well, which will cause the horse to hollow even more. It's all right for jumping. Jumping is an entirely different thing to dressage, but yeah, and this is another thing that can happen if you go too short as well. You can end up sort of bracing into your stirrups too much, and in fact, when you push more into stirrup, that would push your backside even further back into the saddle. So, you might sort of think, well, how do I know what the angles are when I ride? And the answer to that really is you need to get somebody to photograph you, and then you need to have a look at it and see if you can sort of either measure it on the computer or with a protractor. But, most people kind of know, what 45 degrees looks like. So I think that would be the first thing to check. Get a photograph of yourself and just check out the angle of the thigh and adjust the stirrups more appropriately. The other thing as well is, once you have the stirrups too short, it is really going to hard to be doing rising trot correctly. You're kind of having to lever yourself up over this horizontal thigh. So we'll just put the stirrup back down too long now. Whoa. That's very nice. Okay. So actually this thigh, this is, don't press it too much. So this is the kind of thing that you often see with dressage riders, is they lengthen the leg to almost being straight. And, you can have a longer leg than 45 degrees. That's perfectly fine. Not hugely much longer, but a little bit longer. And if you go and watch Carl or Charlotte riding, watch some of the videos. In fact, I'll put some videos up for you to have a look at of some of the Grand Prix riders riding. You won't find them with these super long stirrups, and you'll find that they have a very clear bend in the leg. Okay? The problems with stirrups being this long is the rider simply starts trying to reach into the leg. They don't have any stability in the leg. They can't control the leg enough. And other things start to happen as well. As you reach into the stirrup, the rider starts hollowing in the back like this as they stretch their leg down. And often, actually, long leg tends to go with that idea of grow tall. And you end up with a rider with a straight leg and a hollow in their back. And, if you think about it, if your leg is that long, how much of a rise in your rising or in the US posting trot are you going to be able to do? It's going to end up being very, very small. And I'm sure a number of you have seen the video that I put up of Charlotte Jardin doing rising trot on a young horse, sorry. And she has a very clear height to the rise. So that's another reason to have the stirrups the correct length. And there's actually going to be a whole lesson dedicated to correct rising trot biomechanics and getting energy within the trot. So we'll put this back up again. Is that back? So I would. 14 is getting a bit bored. Oh, I know. Okay. Are we right there? It probably looks maybe a little bit long, but we'll leave it at that. Right on. Okay, so once you've got the stirrup length correct, we also need to make sure that the rider is an approximately neutral spine. Now, neutral spine means that essentially you're the same length on the front of the body as the back of the body. If you're too hollow, the front of your body will be long, the back of your body will be short, and if you're too rounded like this, the front of your body will be too short, and the back of your body will be too long. So we make a sort of a very basic correction there to the rider, and here Millie looks about right. And we might, if anyone has any trouble seeing any of the corrections we're going to be making in a little while, do let us know, and we'll get Millie to take off her jacket here in case it's, too bulky. I think it's fine on the back, but it might look a little bit bulky on front. Yeah, actually, I think we'll get Millie to take her jacket off now. It's very nice. Oh dear.
So I'll put it.
Got it. Okay. Oh, okay. So while Millie's doing that, and I think the pony's all nice and safe there. While Millie's doing that, it's really important to say that if you are going to teach any of this, you've got this. You've got that. If you're going to teach any of this, or you're going to help a friend, or somebody that you don't know really well, it's important to ask the rider if you can put your hands on them, because a number of these corrections that we're going to make are hands-on corrections. You need to put your hands on the rider's thigh, on the rider's leg, on the rider's back, on the rider's front, for instance. So make sure you ask permission to do that. The way that litigation is, and the steps that you have to go through for child protection and so on. Just be very, very careful. Really, we should put our hands on riders. It helps them get the corrections right. We're able to move their body into position. And sometimes just, for instance, in upward transitions, riders can often get a little bit left behind as they move up into the trot from the walk. And what I do is I put my hand on their sternum and say to them, push as if against that resistance. So I'm going to push against them. They've got to push a little bit against my hand. And then when I take the hand away, I say, keep that feeling that you're pushing up against the hand. And then when they make the transition into trot, they stay up with the horse during the transition. So it's important that I can put my hand there and get them to feel the resistance. So, do make sure you ask permission. I just wanted to make that really clear. We've got that. Good. Oh, this looks better. Let's put that over there. Tinker's resting a hand there. Okay. So the next thing that we do when we're making the correction is we want the riders. Actually, you're a little bit taller there with that. So the next correction that we do is we get the rider to put their legs over the front of the saddle with their feet still in the stirrups, and you'll see why in a second. But let's just do that. Both feet over the front. Now, of course, Tinker's pretty calm about all of this, and she's used to us doing this kind of thing. But if you're slightly worried, make sure you get somebody to hold the horse. Okay, and then I say to the rider, I want you to scoot your seat forward so your seat bones are at the bottom of the rise towards the front of the saddle. Give it a little go.
Forwards.
Yeah, forwards, yeah. Good. And are they now on the bottom of the rise towards the feet? You don't want to be on the rise? Okay, good. So once the rider's got her seat bones at the bottom of the rise towards the front of the saddle, you don't want to be on the rise, it's just at the bottom. Then I take the rider's legs and I put them back into place. So, do I have permission to move your leg?
No. Yeah.
Okay, we have to stop here. Billy doesn't give you permission. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So I take my hand, I put it underneath the knee, the other hand goes just behind the ankle. And I bring the thigh back with a slight rotation like this. Don't stretch. That's really relax.
Yeah, relax.
Are we still in shot, by the way? Oh, good. Okay. So I will do that with both legs. So you do the side. So now we've got Millie in the right place in the saddle. We will then just make a few corrections and make sure that she's in neutral spine. And actually, Millie looks pretty good here already. So let's just quickly talk about the shoulder. Are we sideways on, by the way?
Yes.
We're too skewed.
Slightly that way.
Yeah, I think so.
That's what the rise is.
The rock. Oh, okay, at the saddle. Okay. So that is where the saddle rises up towards the pommel. So from there's the area where the seat is, and then the saddle rises up towards the pommel. So it's at the bottom of that rise you want your seat bones to be. Back a little. Okay. So let's just talk. Oh, by the way, one other exercise you can do, which helps get your thigh flatter against the saddle, is to pull the muscle at the back of the thigh out of the way. So can you demonstrate that, Millie? Okay. So this just moves the bulk of the muscle at the back of the thigh out of the way and allows the thigh to get a closer contact against the saddle. And you can actually train your muscle to do that. And you should, next time you get on, you should try that and feel how much closer you are to the saddle and probably how much more stable you feel as well. And it also helps keep the feet pointing forwards. If you at the moment you ride with your knee out like this, it's going to be really hard to have your toes pointing forwards. Have the thigh as flat against the saddle as possible, and that will allow the feet to point forwards naturally, and you won't have that thing of the toes sticking out sideways. Let's talk quickly about the shoulder hip heel alignment. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the shoulder hip heel alignment, and a lot of books talk about it, and a lot of people say it. But actually, not very many. You all right? Just moving there. But actually, not very many riders have a shoulder hip heel alignment. What I often see is this, and sometimes even the rider sort of being behind the movement and leaning back. So this isn't shoulder hip heel at all. So let's put you back to normal. Let me make the correction.
So this also could show the thigh movement again, move the muscle.
Yep, sure. Do you want to do that, Millie? Okay, that's it. So you're putting your hand underneath the thigh, grabbing it out of the way, and just rolling it out so that the thigh just rolls in a little bit flatter against the saddle. Okay. So the shoulder hip heel alignment should be here, here, down to the ankle bone. A real nice little trick that Mary uses to make sure that a person is shoulder hip heel is she'll say, if we were to magic the horse out from underneath the rider, would the rider land on their feet? Would they sort of topple backwards like this, or would they fall forwards onto their face? And that's a really good way of knowing whether you're balanced correctly over your feet, that you can just drop down like that and be directly over the feet. Okay. The other thing I'll say is, we're going to just say about heels down. Heels down is a good thing to have. It's good to have the stretch down the back of the calf. It means the entire leg is connected all the way right down to your feet. But it isn't the be-all and end-all. I often say to people, you can't go from A to Z. Okay, so when we get a pupil in front of us, I don't go heels down, because to me that's a Z. Millie can do heels down. Show them these marvelous heels down, Millie. Millie can do heels down by sticking her leg forward like that. It's very easy. In fact, if I pop my toe and stick my leg forward enough, I can do heels down. See that, Alice? And let's bring it back again. Okay. So it's really important that you don't press the heels down. The heel happens through the tendon in the front of the ankle here, coming into play, and the toe lifting up and a stretch across the back. So actually a really quick exercise you can do while you're sat there on your computer is lift your foot up and just put your fingers right in the front crease of the foot here, where your foot meets the front of your shin. Press into it and then lift your toe up like I've just done here. And when you do that, you'll feel a ropey tendon start to stick out. And that basically is the tendon that should be in action with the ankle. You should be thinking of going toes up and having that tendon in place. You will eventually develop, and sometimes you can do this by bouncing on steps and things like that. You can develop the stretch in that tendon, the stretch down the back here to be able to get heel down. But it isn't the end point. It isn't the beginning point. You shouldn't look to be heels down above and beyond everything else. What's more important is, from like here up to about here, and that you're stable on the horse, and then the extremities will correct themselves. It's kind of like saying to a rider, keep your hands still. When their core is too weak and they're moving around all over the place and they're out of balance. It's the same thing as just saying heels down. There is another thing you need to be aware of with feet as well, as the feet. Oh, Tinker's getting bored. So we'll get Tinker to walk around in a quick second because she's getting a bit bored stood there. The other thing we'll say is don't press into your stirrups. This is different from jumping, but for dressage, don't press down into your stirrups. To go back to physics, Newton's third law states each action has an equal and opposite reaction, which simply means that if I push down, something goes up. Okay? Now, what happens in terms of the stirrup is if you push down, because it's on a pendulum, the stirrup will swing forwards. Not only that, as you push into the stirrup, it will push your bum backwards in the saddle like this. And you can stop now, Millie. And you're making yourself sit further and further and further back in the saddle, and there's just no way from that place that you're going to be in anything but what Mary calls water ski motorboat. Do you want to walk on with it? She's getting a little bit bored. Oh, yeah. Bless her. So, foot line in the stirrup, think toes up, activate the tendon in the front of the foot here, and then you'll know that you're going toes up as much as you can at that point. Keep the foot light. It should just be enough to stop the stirrup slipping, and that's it. You don't want any more pressure on that. Otherwise, you just simply activate that whole group. And in fact, for dressage, you could say that pressing into your stirrup is the opposite of sitting deep. You press down, your bum goes up. So there's no way you're going to learn to sit deep that way. Okay, so we'll rearrange Millie again. Actually, Millie, you can keep walking for a little bit. I can cover this next one without you. I think I posted up on Facebook saying about thigh on or thigh off. Well, I believe the thigh should lie flat against the saddle and be fairly snug. Now, I missed out the era in the UK where people were being taught to grip with their knees. So I didn't have that. But I was there for the what's the word I'm looking for? For the lashback against knees in, which was thighs away from the saddle. And a lot of people are relax your thighs, which was kind of fine when you've got people that are gripping in with their knees to say something along those lines, because there was too much pressure on the knee against the saddle. Thighs away from the saddle, well, thighs away often comes with relax and let the thighs go loose. And let's just imagine a couple of the consequences of having really loose away from the saddle thighs. Well, one consequence will be that if the horse were to speed off, then you've got a tiny piece of contact on the saddle, and it's very likely that you'll just simply get left behind because you've got no leverage to keep yourself up with the horse. The worst consequence of thighs away is that what you end up doing is taking away this whole weight-bearing surface of your thigh away from the saddle and away from the horse. And of course, if this is no longer weight-bearing, then what is? Well, it's your seat bones. So you're sat on top of the horse with the entirety of your weight pushing down into your seat bones into the horse's back. And, in that kind of case where you're not supporting your weight on the bit is going to be extremely difficult. It's going to be really difficult to do any kind of dressage where you're wanting to get the horse's back to come up and reach into the rein. So it's very important that the thigh is flat and weight-bearing. And the reason why I say snug is that most people don't have enough tone in their thighs to fit, and therefore will need to feel like their thighs are snug. They actually have to get more tone in their thighs. It's all right for professional riders that ride for instance, Charlotte rides 10 horses a day, to say no, you shouldn't have a lot of inward pressure with your thigh. Well, they're already extremely toned and can hold their thigh in place. So for most riders, they need more tone. There are riders that I have said to relax the tone because they're pressing in so much that they're actually blocking the horse from moving. So it's very hard to sort of be general, but most people need more tone. It's occasionally the really strong kind of guys that get on horses that need to loosen off the tone. But for most riders, you need to feel like you're snug. The snugness should be more at the top of the thigh and is probably less as you get down towards the knee. It's more important that the snugness is at the top and not at the bottom. If you press in with your knees, you'll end up doing, this kind of thing where your knees come in and your backside splays out behind you. So it's more should be narrow at the top of the thigh and, not so much down towards the knee. And some saddles will not allow you to have your knee on anyway. So, you could be snug on the inner thigh, but your knee will be slightly away from the saddle. Any questions so far? No? Good? Right. Okay, so we're going to talk about the typical ways that riders' postures go wrong. And I don't know if anyone's noticed that occasionally Millie has a certain issue with her back that we keep making corrections. Yeah, you're a little bit hollow at times. So sometimes Millie goes a little bit hollow. But let's explain the ways that riders go wrong. And I know there's a lot of, actually, that would be something for the chat. Just give us a shout if you're a coach. And one of the reasons you've joined this program is for some better ways to explain to pupils and different ways to teach them. That would be really interesting to know. So we're going to go the typical ways that people have gone wrong. And the first thing to know is that really the body has two hinges when we're talking about getting neutral spine and getting the rider being upright and correct. You can walk around one more time. She's got lazy, right? The first is the hip joint. So that's kind of in here, and that's the joint that kind of does this, where we can tip forwards or we can lean back, for instance, which I can't do very well without falling over. The second joint is where our waist is. Okay, so we can do like hollow back, and we can do round back like this. And there's quite a few combinations. If you look on my Facebook page, I think I put a image up there of all the 9 different ways of going, 8 different ways of going wrong and 1 correct one. So one's neutral spine, one would be leaning forwards from the waist, and then leaning back. And then you can have leaning forwards with a hollow back, leaning forwards with a round back, leaning back with a round back. This often comes with lower leg too far forwards. And leaning back with a hollow back, which actually is fairly rare. I think I don't really see that too often. I see slight variations of it, but nothing as extreme as that. So we're going to have a look at these variations with Millie and just talk about some of the corrections that you need to make. One of the bits of homework that we're going to do at the end of this session is to get you to get a photograph taken of yourself after you've made some of these corrections and got yourself close. And I'm going to create a Facebook post specifically for people to add their pictures to. And I'll go through each one of them and just make some advice and some corrections. So, I'll give you a bit more information about that at the end of the session. So, Millie, if you could do lean forward and hollow back for me. Okay. Okay, can everyone see this all right? Is she sideways on enough? She look all right there? Let's move her over a little bit. Come on, take it from. All right. Okay, so lean forward and hollow back. So at this point, the first thing you need to get the rider to do is just to lean back a little bit first. I'll do that first. Now, the trouble is they're now like this, okay? So the second thing I'll get them to do is to feel as though they're going waistband back. Now, I'm just touching Millie, any old who, but as I've said before, make sure that you get permission. So, Millie, as if I'm pulling back on your waistband here, like that. That's it. Okay. And that helps bring Millie up into neutral spine. So waistband back is a good exercise for somebody who's hollow after you've gone through all the other stuff. The other thing you could say to them if they're having a trouble with waistband back is often it comes up with chest too high. So you can go waistband back and sternum down a little bit so that the right becomes straight. Another thing that I was actually speaking to Mary last week, and she came up with a piece of imagery which I thought was fantastic. She said, imagine your pelvis, the sort of bony structure of a pelvis was filled with water. And she'd say, where would the water slop out? Now, if you've got a pelvis that's tilted forwards a lot, you can imagine that all the water's kind of like falling out the front. And what would you have to do with your pelvis to get it level and have that water not just be gushing out the front? So that's quite a useful demonstration as well. So let's do round back, lean back. Okay, yeah, let's just do that. That's a good one, Millie. So Millie's doing the round back tip forwards here. So the first thing I'll get Millie to do is to lift her sternum. So try that now, lift her sternum up. Okay. And I'll often say as well, imagine the shoulder blades are connected together and someone's just pulling down. That's it. Good. Now I know female teachers can get away with this better than I could, but you could just say bra strap down at the back and just kind of grab hold of the bra strap and just pull down a little bit, and that helps as well. So that correction would be sternum up, pull back down between the shoulder blades. Tinker, we'll get her to walk on in a little bit. And okay, so now we're going to do the lean back and round back. Okay, and collapse in the middle. Okay, so again, really make use of kind of pushing on the rider. So we're going to push here, we're going to go forward, so we get the rider actually upright. That's the kind of first thing to do, and then we can go sternum up. That's it, and we make that sort of same correction that we made before. Okay, I think we've kind of pretty much covered all of the exercises there. Yes?
One person saying they tip their head forward.
Yeah. Yes.
And people saying that they're crooked.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, what I'll say is the asymmetry issues we're going to talk about in the lesson on turning. So we're going to cover quite a lot of those things on turning. But we'll get to the head and shoulders. So often what we'll find with head tipping forward is that the shoulders are rounded as well. One thing I haven't actually explained is how to carry the hands, and I'll show that in a minute. And having hands correctly carried helps with this. But really you need to sort of go shoulder blades back together and also get a feeling that you're closing the backs of your armpits. So you kind of close here a little bit so that the elbows come a little bit more in. You know, a lot of riders are kind of doing this, rounded shoulders, so shoulders back, shoulder blades back together, closing the armpits at the back, which will also just help open the chest out. And try and feel as though you're trying to create a greater curvature across here. So you're kind of trying to get more of your entirety of your chest ahead of your shoulders. So of course we round and that all creeps back. So shoulders back, shoulder blades together, expand across here, close the armpits at the back so that the arms come in that little bit more. And that should help correct here. You know, lots of people look down. I don't mind people looking down terribly as long as the shoulders are all sorted out and the rider's looking down. You know, when we're processing information internally, we look down. It just happens. You know, I do it. Lots of people do it. When you're riding and you're on top of it all and you're not using tons of brain cells, you find you can start to look up and, you know, think about other things. So, you know, as long as the head isn't kind of leading into rounding shoulders, then it's not too bad. But you should look up and look where you're going and have kind of soft focus in your eyes. But inevitably, when we're really kind of thinking and processing, we often tend to look down. So, you know, again, it's one of the, what I call those A to Z things. I often think peripherals like hands, feet, and head are those Zs, you know, where once you get stable in the middle, once you get your tendons sorted out, once you start getting your position correct, once you start feeling more comfortable and stable and everything else, the hands stay in place, you start to be able to look up, and your heels are in place. But, you know, those are the Z things. So, yeah, don't worry about looking down as long as it's kind of not leading into anything else. So that's all I'll say about the shoulders. What else have we got over there? Okay, so we talked about that. Now I'm going to get Millie to walk on and I'm just going to turn my sheet over. It's actually 10 to 2, can you believe it? And I've only got through one sheet. So I'm going to turn the sheet over. We'll keep going. Really don't worry about it. Off you go. You want the stick? Yes. Oh, yes, because you'll need it for carrying the hands. Yeah, have you got a question up there? I'll have it.
They can't hear me, so they're asking me to repeat the question.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Any tips for for reducing tension in the back and neck?
Okay, so I've been asked a question, any tips for reducing tension in the back and the neck? You're going to have some tension to maintain your body tone correctly. But if you're getting tension in the neck and back, as in it starts to hurt, you're probably holding somewhere and something's not doing the job that it should be doing. I mean, the only advice I can give would be to do the usual neck rolling and just kind of scan your body for any excess tension. Unfortunately, this is the only kind of thing that can be diagnosed by having a look at your riding and seeing you go around. Do take a picture of yourself or a snippet of video and post it on the Facebook post that I'm going to put together. And I'll email everybody as well, and you'll keep checking on my page and you'll see that. And I'll have a look at you. I'd happily have a look at your issue, especially if you do a bit of video. And, I might be able to spot what would be causing that. It might be your, gritting your teeth. You've got a tight jaw that could be causing it, for instance. It could be your breathing. So make sure as you're riding around that you are breathing regularly and evenly and deeply at the same time. So I'm just going to turn the sheet over.
They're asking also to stand front, just so they can see the movement all the time.
Okay, yeah. Okay, going to come back into place, Millie. So more away from the camera, more Millie in view. Excellent. They want to look at you, Millie. So am I close enough to the camera right now? So Kirsten keeps sending me your messages. Perfect, yeah? So is that looking good? Awesome, right. So I need to stand here, basically. In profile, yeah. Your back. So everyone's probably noticed Millie's back was a little bit hollow there. A little bit taller. All right. So let's have a look at carrying the hands. So you'll notice here that a little bit higher. That's it. What you want to see is a straight line from the elbow through the wrist down to the bit. Now, Tinker's got her head quite low, so Millie's hands might be a smidge high during this demonstration, because normally you carry your hands up a little bit higher. Okay. You'll notice that Millie's hands are slightly above and slightly in front of the wither. You'll also notice that the elbow has a slight angle to it as well. The elbows aren't like this. The hand stays out in front. And again, I'm going to send you a little website link where you can see lots of pictures of some of the top Grand Prix riders, and the hands are all out in front with this elbow pushing out here. We will talk more about that, but one of the things that I use quite a bit for riders is stand in front of a wall in neutral spine, push your hands up against the wall, and just get a sense of you pushing against the wall. Now, what you then want to do is to step back away from the wall, put the hands out in front, and push your hands as if against a resistance, as if the wall was really there. Now, you're not doing this. You don't let your hands actually go any further forwards. It's just a sense that your hands are always having this attitude of pushing forwards. You also might feel that when you stand in front of the wall and you push against the wall, you'll find it activates your stomach muscles and your back, and that your core becomes stronger. And that is actually a requirement of being able to push your hands forward, is having a good core strength, especially with all the dynamics the horse throws at you. And we will be talking about core strength in the next session on the seat as well. Okay, another tip for helping keep your hands in the right place, and I did a whole video on this, Millie's very, very good at this kind of thing, is to carry the stick correctly. So the stick should be from the hand across the thigh, and you want to get a feeling that you're pressing the stick very slightly against the thigh by kind of almost doing that with your hand a little bit by keeping it pressed in. Maybe I can borrow the stick. Okay, so like this, with a little bit of pressure in that way. Okay? And then the stick is correctly where your foot is, ready to apply to back up your leg aid, and your hand is then in the correct place. If you see riders like this, or like this, for instance, or the stick out sideways, or not even across the thigh, you know there's a problem with the hand. Only when the hand's out in front and the stick is across the thigh like this is the rider's hands in the correct place. Hands down, this kind of thing happens. So it's a really good marker for getting your hands in the right place. Okay, so what do we have next? Okay, so I just want to quickly cover this idea that you should relax. Just relax. And the trouble is, a relaxed rider is, in terms of muscle tone, is a rider who is completely at the mercy of everything the horse throws at them. If the horse speeds up, then the rider's body just goes along for the ride. If the horse suddenly slows down, the rider's body gets thrown forwards. You need quite a lot of muscle tone to match the forces generated by the horse. Otherwise, if you don't, all you'll ever be able to rely on is pulling on the reins to control the tempo of the horse. So it's really important to have good muscle tone. And one of the things, for instance, we'll talk about when we look at transitions is how you stay up with and survive downward transitions. And that is a lot to do with how stable your body is and how much core strength you have. If you're too relaxed and your horse decides to fall in its forehand and run in the trot, then what are you going to do? Are you going to bounce more? You're going to, rise faster? Because that's the only choice you'll have if you don't have enough tone in your muscles to be able to control the tempo. Here's a little exercise you can try at home. I suggest you try it in your driveway or somewhere safe like that. But you're in the car. Take hold of the steering wheel, take your back away from the back of the chair, and just start to accelerate a little bit. And you'll find it is very difficult not to grab hold of the steering wheel and start to fall backwards like this. And then try and work out how much tone you have to provide in your body to stay up with the movement of that acceleration without grabbing onto the steering wheel. And you'll find it's quite a lot of hard work. But we'll get more into that in the next session anyway. Okay, so a lot of the information that we give you has an aspect of self-regulation. So here's what I think is a really good way of making sure that your pelvis is correct and that you're not, and you're not like this, or you're not holding back. So I like to say that I want the rider to imagine they're sat on a surface that has the shape of a square. And that square has front corners and back corners. So the sitting area is like a square. And I ask the person, how much weight would you say is on your front corners? And how much weight is on your back corners? Now you can imagine a rider that is hollow backed, if you do hollow milling, that all the weight is on their front corners. And if you imagine a rider that's round backed, lean back a bit more, round back. Millie can't do round back that well. Then, yeah, that's better. All the weight is on the back corners. And it's really, you can go back now. And it's really surprising actually that a lot of people seem to self-diagnose using that imagery really, really well. They give very accurate answers. So you could ask yourself, how much weight is on my front corners and how much weight is on my back corners? And you want to go for 50-50, so that it's both the same. The final thing I'll say about alignment and posture is that when you get moving, you do need to provide a little bit of tone to keep you going. You do need to make sure that the stirrup stays light on the foot and that there's no extraneous movement from yourself. So, your thigh stays snug, you're sitting still, and you're responsible for staying up with the horse. We'll get into that a lot more when we talk about tempo control and the seat in the next session. Tinker and Millie do a really good job in demonstrating tempo control, how to get more impulsion, how to sit still, and how to slow the tempo down with the seat. So we will talk about that. So we've got a question about hands. Oh, good question. I like that question. Oh, by the way, we will be doing some more questions. I know it's nearly 2 o'clock, but hey, what the heck? We are going to take more questions. So I'm giving away a prize of a copy of my book to the best questions. I think that's the best question so far. Width of the hands. This depends on the horse that you're riding and the level of the horse that you're riding. So on a young horse, especially horses that are kind of really unstraight and fall out to the shoulders, a wider hand is more preferential. Okay, so I would say I would have my hand this wide, on a younger horse, and maybe even very slightly wider. On a sorry? No, it's fine. And for a more advanced horse, my hands will be closer together, something like this. And the younger horse needs the slightly wider hands, which help control the shoulders better. It just helps with the steering to have those hands that little bit wider. Okay, so yeah, Millie, you can walk on. Thank you very much, Millie. That's been really helpful. Your pony's gone to sleep. Okay, so we're going to do homework now. Thank you all very much for hanging in with me there. This is the slowest of all the lessons, so don't worry. As lessons progress, we will be doing more work. This is really just ground zero, making sure that your alignment is correct and you're not showing any of the typical faults. You want to be neutral spine. You want to make sure that your shoulder, hip, heel, that you're correctly positioned in the saddle. You're not sitting too far back by the exercise of lifting the thighs over. And by the way, if you tend to sit too far back in the saddle, as the horse's back progresses further backwards, he has less and less support for your weight. So by sitting too far back in the saddle, you'll actually cause the horse's back to hollow and make it difficult for him to work through. So I'm just going to grab a chair because we're going to use that to do the homework. So many of you may already be sitting on a flat chair. So try and find yourself a flat chair where you can feel your seat bones. And what you want to do is to go hollow. And as you go hollow, feel your seat bones pointing backwards. And then rock backwards. And you should feel your seat bones now pointing forwards. And then see if you can bring your pelvis into the place where it feels like your seat bones are pointing straight down. And there you've got yourself more in a neutral spine where the front of your body is the same length as the back of the body. Get yourself in front of a mirror when you do it, and that will really help as well. And if you can get yourself in front of a mirror on a horse, that will really help too, that you can do that kind of thing. A couple of things you can try just while you're here as well is put both feet on the floor and push down into your feet. And as you push down into your feet, notice what happens to your body. Sometimes people will find that they'll tip forwards. Some people will get pushed further back in the chair. Imagine what happens if you just pushed on one stirrup, for instance, or the other foot. So these are sort of useful things to feel what could happen if you start putting too much weight into your feet. So what I'd really like you to do is to get a photograph of yourself in correct alignment and put it up on Facebook for me. I will make a post this afternoon, and hopefully everyone can put their pictures on there. As I said, this course has been extremely well subscribed to, which allows me an awful lot of time to look through your pictures, make comments, make suggestions, and also make additional corrections that we haven't really talked about here that I haven't just sort of thought to mention. Let me just check one further thing. Sort of neutral spine. Yep. The other thing I will put up as well in the members area will actually be the replay link and also some videos of some of the riders which I think demonstrate correct mechanics and correct alignment as well. We all, you take pictures and sometimes we look great and sometimes we don't. But in general, make sure you have neutral spine, you're balanced over your feet, your thighs at 45 degrees, You're not pushing into your stirrups. Your hands are carried out in front of you. Am I upright here? I have this little tendency to lean back when I'm standing on the ground demonstrating. And the hands are out in front. And there's an engagement in your core which keeps those hands out in front of you and not pulling backwards. Okay, so question time. Do we have some questions? Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let me put the chair back. Well, hey folks, I am sorry that I'm running over time here. It took longer than I thought to get through those, which is good. That helps me pace the next lectures as well.
So, somebody has asked, could you give centimetre rule for hand width? It's difficult to see.
Oh gosh, I haven't thought about it, but I will whip out a ruler. Okay, so actually, let me repeat the question. Kirsten said, do I have a ruler centimetre measurement for how far apart the hands should be? Because it was hard to tell from here. I will go up and measure them, and I'll let you know on Facebook. That's going to be quite interesting, and I wonder if it changes with body type as well. I wonder if bigger riders have their hands further apart just because their shoulders are further apart, and so on. So that would be quite an interesting little test. Do you have any other questions?
Yes. Lynn has asked, can you suggest an exercise for people with the lower leg and correct position because she seems to lose her stirrup easily as she kicks?
Ah, right, okay. So Lynn asks, do we have any sort of exercises to help stabilize the lower leg? Because when she uses her leg and kicks, she often uses the stirrup, loses the stirrup, yes? So, actually, we didn't really talk about using the leg aids, and that's one of the things we're going to discuss when we talk about upward and downward transitions. But what this might be is when you're using your leg, you're actually kicking like this and kicking up and back, and that could end up losing your stirrup because you're essentially jerking the foot away from the stirrup iron. When you use the leg, nothing should move from here upwards, so that the lower leg just kind of does that. It kind of bangs in. So if you're going to kick, then it's kind of that kind of movement rather than a backward movement, and you'll be less likely to lose your stirrup then. And the other thing is, as well, is if you're kind of gripping upwards with your knee, if your knee is coming up too much like this, it may be that you don't actually have a secure enough hold on your stirrups anyway. There should only be a light weight to stop, enough weight in your stirrups to stop them slipping. So my guess is possibly that there's too much of this movement going on and not enough of simply feeling like you're banging the stirrup iron under the belly a little bit. I hope that answers the question. Do we have any other questions?
We do. Barbara says, how many of these positional corrections do you address in one session? She understands it's different for everyone. How much would you address before putting the personal information?
Okay, so Barbara says, how many of these positional corrections would I make before I got the rider into motion and got them walking on? So in actual fact, I do correct stirrup length. I then do making sure that the rider has the seat in the right place. I do neutral spine. So depending on whether they need to go waistband back or whether they need to get the top of the pelvis pushing forwards, whatever correction they need to do to get them to very close to neutral spine, and then I'll send them on. And all we're doing in that initial section on the ground is establishing the language and the communication, so that let's say the rider is hollow, she knows what I mean by waistband back. She knows what I mean by sternum down or sternum up. Whatever the correction is, I've given it, she's felt it in her body, and then we get moving on, and then I can make those corrections as they go on. So for instance, with hollow back riders, we find we get waistband back, we get them in neutral spine, and then we say, and walk on, and they go, and they shove the horse on and start using their legs, and the back becomes hollow. So often we have to talk about transitions, but then I would be saying waistband back, drop the chest, and that's when we get moving. So I don't spend a long time, it's just enough to establish the communication between me and the rider. They understand what I want. often you'll find you're teaching someone and you'll say something and you'll say something and the rider just isn't getting it. And sometimes it's worth bringing them into the middle, getting hands on, making the corrections so that your words mean this physical movement in the rider's body and they understand it and can make it happen. I understand it's really difficult for guys more than girls to go up and put their hands on a rider's body. Just ask for permission, but it is the best way to get input into a rider. Riding is all about kinesthetics. It's all about body feel, body awareness. And any way you can get that feeling into the rider, from grabbing hold of the back of the waistband and pulling backwards, or I wouldn't do it, but grab hold of the bra strap and pulling the bra strap down. If you're female, you're likely to get away with it. But depending on how comfortable you are with the person, there's lots of different phrases that you could use and lots of different things you can do to get them in the right place. So, for instance, that idea of where I put my fingers on the sternum and get the rider to push against that resistance, and then when I take my hand away, they're pushing against the resistance there. I hope that answers the question. I got a bit long-winded like I normally do, but the idea is the initial correction and off they go. We had an awful lot to talk about to go through the various combinations during this session, but normally they come in, I make the corrections, and then off they go. And when I say something, they know what bodily action they have to do to make the correction. Do we have any other questions? Oh, we got lots of questions. Woo! Let's go.
About equal weight to each side of the seat bone?
Yeah, I mean, so the question is, who asked that?
That was Sally.
Hi, Sally. Equal weight in both seat bones. Often what you'll find equal weight in both seat bones is kind of down to symmetry issues. So, you could be collapsed one side or collapsed the other side. You could be pushing more in one stirrup or the other. So, if you've got one seat bone that's kind of not there and one seat bone that is, just check out whether you've got equal weight in both stirrups. Another thing that could make a difference as well could be odd stirrups. It's probably worth walking on with that. It could be odd stirrups. It could be that you're gripping up on one knee than the other. Just simply by moving the knee will actually change the angle of the seat bone as well. So post your picture, and I'll also have a look at it. By the way, is it light? Can they see enough? Because it's quite dark today. It is good. Okay, cool.
Will riding without stirrups help relaxing? That is from Elizabeth.
I think riding without stirrups is good at stretching legs, at opening the joints, that kind of thing. I'm not sure whether relaxing the legs is that much of an aim, unless, of course, you're kind of, if you're shortening the front of the thigh like this and lifting the knee up, then yes, definitely stretching the legs and working without stirrups will really help you get the muscle at the back of the thigh into operation and get the knee down and so on. But I don't do a lot of work without stirrups unless the person has something very specific that needs work without stirrups. So, for instance, if they're quite short, here and they're not able to stretch the leg down, then it's a perfect reason to do stretching of the legs.
Carol says, an exercise to keep hands still when riding.
An exercise to keep hands still when riding. Okay, so we will look at that in rising trot mechanics, because that's one of the things that happens in rising trot is riders' hands go up and down, for instance. We're going to talk a little bit about it in the seat, but really it's down to how stable you are as a rider. If you're being bounced around and moved around by the horse, there's not much chance of you keeping the hands still. Again, I often think the hands are one of those Z points where you can't by commanding somebody to keep their hands still. They're not just going to suddenly keep their hands still. Most people don't get on a horse and think, oh, today I'm just going to bounce my hands around all over the place on purpose. they're not able to control the hands because other things are incorrect. So once you get more stable in your position, more control over your body, your hands will get stiller, full stop. And the rising trot mechanism, the issue with that people often have is they keep the arm angle the same. So they go up and down like this and the hands move as well, rather than the angle opening and closing on the rise and on the sit. And we will talk about that in the rising trot mechanism lesson.
Ryan says managing position and weight to the head. What do you suggest, given that head weight position has a powerful influence on posture? Suggestions on managing this?
So someone's asking about managing the head, since the head has quite an influence over the rider's posture. Yeah, I don't mind the rider doing a little bit of looking down, but if I see the rider doing this quite a bit, I will start looking at using analogies such as talking about the rider's long muscle back chain here. So I'll get the rider to shorten the entire back chain, which will help lift the head up. It's like the whole keeping your hands still, saying to somebody, look up, look up, look up, look up, look up. If they've got a long back and a short front and they're rounding their shoulders, then they just are going to look down. Riders generally are going to look down anyway because they're busy processing so much information when they're riding that they will tend to look down. So, the best we can do is get their body in the right place, make sure that there's nothing out of place there, and we can talk about shortening the back chain and so on. I find riders tend to look more up once they get that bit more brain capacity. If they're looking down so much that it's dragging on the rest of the body and making everything else difficult, then I will resort to saying, look up, bring your chin more back like this. So, you could actually literally put your finger on their chin and just push them back this way as well. But yeah, I don't come across many riders that are really, really bad. And maybe I'm just tolerant to a point where if the head is like this, for instance, I'm not too bothered. And, as I said, I think riders tend to look up more once they've got more brain space. I know I do. I know, when I'm on a difficult horse, I'm kind of like this, I am looking down just because my brain space is used up. And then when I'm riding an easy horse, I'm up, I'm looking round, and, I'm processing everything subconsciously without having to think about it too much. So I'll only make a correction if it starts affecting everything, and that's kind of, you can do the whole push the chin back, or feel as though you have the head and neck set further back on the neck. Sometimes helps.
Lillian asks, do you have any exercises to prevent pushing into the stirrups or taking too much weight into the stirrups?
Okay, so who was that? Lillian. So Lillian asks, do I have any exercises to help you avoid pushing into the stirrups too much and putting too much weight in there? Yeah, don't do it. Okay, so this may depend on what you're doing with your thigh. This may depend upon the stirrup lengths that you've got. If your stirrup's too short, it's going to be very difficult not to push into the stirrups. If you're used to having your leg forward, you may end up doing it. Sometimes some riders actually have to think of heel back up and foot light to make it work. And all you can do is to keep... so I have a list in my head of all the things that I have to think about. So for instance, for me, two major things I have to think about when I ride are hands out in front, because I have a tendency to have my elbow come too far back. So I have to, in my list, I'm going hands out in front, and I'm also using the word back chain, because my issue with all my years of working on computers, I have my front too short. I actually have to shorten the entire back chain of muscles, so that helps me stay upright. So, and I have about another couple of items on my list as well. So you just got to make a list, and you just got to keep running through it and keep sort of feeling what's happening underneath you. You get better at what you practice. So the more focus you put on, keep thinking of foot light, the quicker it will become something automatic for you. There isn't much more than that. As I said, check your stirrup length, make sure that you're in neutral spine, and make sure that your shoulder, hip, heel, and you're not in this kind of position. Any more?
Alison says, what's about the actual grip around the reins? Open slightly or?
Oh, okay. So grip around the reins, the thumb should press. Is this close? Good. Thumb should press down the top of the rein, so the thumb kind of makes a little hat like that. And the fingers will just rest flat against the palm. Don't dig your fingers in. Don't curl them in like this. It's just kind of like that, with the fingers resting. I've got a picture of it. I shall make it available. If you go through my Facebook photographs, you'll find a picture of a hand showing this. Rein width makes a difference. So we have a horse here that I ride. It has those rubber reins, really thick, and I can't do more than this with my hand. The rubber is so thick that I can't get it to fit in the distance between my kind of knuckles and this joint here. So my hand ends up being more open to be able to do that, but I'm still in this kind of position. So it does depend upon the reins. If you have small hands, and I've got quite small hands, think perhaps of moving to a thinner rein. Something that actually fits the hand correctly and doesn't feel really, really thick in your hands. I know a lot of people go, "Oh, I've got really small hands," but I really have. I'm a professional magician as well, and I have to say, when learning to palm a card, it was the hardest thing on the planet. And when I palm a card, I have like 1 millimeter either side of the card, and it's really, really difficult being a magician with small hands. Okay, do we have any other questions?
Shirley says she's been taught by a classical trainer the hands, knees, toes alignment to keep the upper arm, knees vertically downwards towards close to the side.
Yeah.
And that way you're able to be back perfectly. How does that work in comparison to the alignment you described today?
Well, I think if you're going knees over front of toes, you're just going to be, I think, a little bit back, and with your elbows vertical, it's just so easy to be pulling backwards with the hands rather than the hands out in front. The shoulder, hip, heel alignment I've described here for dressage has you balanced over your feet, has your hands out in front of you so that you're responsible for your hands, and you're much less likely to draw back. The whole thing has a feeling of being forward and thinking about being up with the horse. The moment you start getting to a point where the leg comes in front of the upper body and your hands are back here, as soon as the horse accelerates, you're just kind of asking to be left behind by the horse. I can't tell unless you posted a picture how much out from the alignment that I described you are. But in general, the more the leg goes forwards, the more you're going to end up sitting too far back in the saddle, the more you're going to be behind the movement of the horse. You just think about the moment, with your leg forward, the moment the horse accelerates, what are you going to do? Probably hang on the reins. So this kind of alignment keeps you really pushed up with the horse. And when we talk about the seat tomorrow, you'll learn about the kind of tone that will allow you to stay up with the horse no matter what's happening to you. One of the skills of really good riders is you put them on a horse that is full of power, full of energy, and they still look still and toned and balanced, and they're up with the horse and they're not being thrown around. That takes tone, that takes the ability to stay up with the horse and not rely on the reins to tow you along behind the horse. But if you want to show me a picture, I can happily have a look at it. Other questions?
Lisa says, do you have any opinion on whether the shoulder back is an aid that you can buy and wear to help people with round shoulders?
Ooh, I haven't heard of those. Sorry, so the question was, do I have an opinion on shoulders back? Which is
the shoulders back aid you can buy
the shoulders back aid. Oh, right. I don't even know about that. So, some of these things can be pretty useful. Mary sells a couple of things, which one of them she calls the rider's belt. And essentially, it's elastic. It's an elastic Velcro belt which goes around the waist here and sits on really snug. It also has a loop which you can put your thumbs underneath, and your job is to keep that kind of loop taut so that your hands stay out in front of you. But additionally, what happens is you then get a sense of your body underneath that belt. You get a sense of the muscle structure underneath there. You get a sense of your stomach muscles, your core strength, and it gives you something to push out against and gives you a sense of where your boundaries are and that kind of thing. So, if the aid gives you a sense of awareness of where everything is and helps you feel the right place to put it in, then I think it's really good. And the only issue becomes is if you're just simply relying on that to hold your shoulders in place. If you're kind of just leaving them, essentially leaving them sagging and that thing's just falling you back. I think you've got to be putting the effort in and making the corrections in your body to get your shoulders right. And I think that aid would give you a feeling of whether you were in the right place or not. But as I said, I don't know about that one particularly. But I do know some of these things can help. I don't profess to be, a top rider. I don't profess to know everything. We're all learning and we're all where we're at, and there's always people behind us that we can help. But I know there's this thing called taping, which I know Mary knows about, and there's a lot of riders in the US do it, and they do it on riders and they do it on horses as well. And essentially, you're applying tape or bandages to different places on the horse and the rider as well. And I think the idea there is the rider gets a sense of their body in those areas and how the muscle structure works in those areas. And you really start to become a lot more aware of your body. So in that sense, I think those kind of aids can help, as long as they're not a crutch, which solves the problem. I know, for instance, some riders with the rider's belt, for instance, they wear the rider's belt when they go into competitions because they can push against that belt. They can feel their core muscles engage, push against the belt. And, it gives them that extra stability and strength that they might have kind of lost due to nerves when they got into the competition, because the belt gives them the sense of their boundaries and their muscle structure. That was a very long answer. Apologies. Any other questions? Okay. Wow. Yes. So it's almost 2:30 here. Thank you very much for joining me. If you have any questions, just ask me on Facebook. I'm going to put a specific post up on there. Thanks for sticking me for the 90 minutes, and I will email everybody and put on the membership page when the next lecture is. If you enjoyed the lecture and you got something useful out of it, do put something up on Facebook, maybe put something on a post and let other people know that you enjoyed it. And we'll keep in touch over the next couple of weeks before the next lecture, so I can have a look at your alignment photographs and that sort of thing. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Millie. Thank you, Kirsten, for relaying the questions. And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you very much.